Good morning and welcome to the CABE Webinar Wednesday. Today we are looking at your national standards body, Built Environment Update, with Ant Bird, Director of Built Environment, and Deborah Brown, Knowledge Sales Director at BSI Standards. This webinar will explore the role of BSI in its capacity as the UK's national standard body and the importance of national and international standards to the sector. It will provide an update on the latest built environment standards, including those relating to building and fire safety, competency, accessibility, and the latest structural Eurocodes. My name is Zaina and I'm the Training and Learning Coordinator here at CABE. I will be acting as moderator for this morning's session. CABE strives to create interactive webinars, and if you are watching live, you can use the Q&A function to submit questions, which will be addressed at the end of the session. You're also welcome to contact us at webinars@cbuilde.com. Let me now introduce today's webinar presenters, Ant Bird and Deborah Brown. Ant heads up the Built Environment team at BSI, the UK's national standards body. In addition to providing subject matter expertise and thought leadership, he also oversees the identification of new areas of research, standardisation and supporting product needs via engagement with key stakeholders from across government and the wider section. He also oversees the promotion of the standards portfolio to national and international marketplaces. Deborah heads up the commercial solutions sales teams, focusing on BSI core subscription services such as BSI membership and the BSI Knowledge platform. Over 30 years of working within publishing companies, all related to the support and sales of professional information solutions. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Ant and Deborah to begin the presentation. Over to you both.
Thank you. And good morning, everybody. It's great to be able to join you for one of your webinar Wednesdays. We'll just get our slides up. Deborah, can you just confirm that you can see that on presentation mode? Wonderful. Right, let's get started. As I say, good morning, everybody. Great to be able to be here to join you all. I'm Ant Bird. I've had the privilege of being a CABE member for a very long time. I also sat on your board for 4 years and was very privileged to be a president back in 2019. So welcome to all CABE members. Good to interact with you again. And I know we'll be joined by a number of non-CABE members as well. So as I say, great to be here. I'll hand over to Deborah towards the end of the presentation because she's got a demonstration to show you. So moving into today's presentation. Okay, it's quite a packed agenda. It's very much a roll through a broad update in terms of BSI, who we are, the sector at large in which we all work, and then a focus on building safety, a bit of sustainability, modern methods of construction, and of course, structural Eurocodes. And then I'll give you a few links to get more involved in terms of suggesting ideas for new standards and how to actually comment on some of our draft standards that go out for public consultation. And then I'll hand over to Deborah, who'll take you through our knowledge platform and an offer that we have in place for small micro entities in terms of access to all of our content. And then as time allows, hopefully we can get some good Q&A in at the end. So in terms of BSI, under World Trade Organizational rules, every country around the globe should have a national standards body, and we, BSI, are your national standards body. In fact, we were the first national standards body. Now, BSI is a very large entity, and Deborah and I sit in something called Knowledge Solutions, which is there on the left, and that is really where the work is undertaken as a national standards body. So that is the creation and sharing of standards and development of information solutions and tools for how to access and utilize our content. And Deborah will touch upon that a bit later. The much bigger part of BSI Group offers assurance services, regulatory services in the medical devices space, amongst others, and a wider consulting offer as well. Now, the reason we have a line between us as Knowledge Solutions and everybody else is that while we are one group, we have a line of delineation and a code of conduct as to how we can work together, and we do work together closely within the rules of our code of conduct. But it's imperative and to be clear that as BSI, the national standards body, we serve the entire marketplace. So there are other just as good entities in the assurance and certification space other than BSI, okay? They won't be happy I said that, but there's some great businesses out there as well that you can buy similar services, and we serve them all as the NSB, and we have to be very clear about that. In terms of a gentle reminder as to what standards are, very simply, they're a consensus of what good looks like in our sector. They are a consensus tools, and we'll talk about that a bit later, and they are used around the world to support companies and buildings to build trust and improve performance. Through specifications, test methodologies and classifications, codes of practice, guides, processes and frameworks. It is really important for us to say and remind people that they set out broadly what good looks like. And with a few exceptions, they are typically voluntary, okay? And that comes up a lot when people talk about our standards as being definitively mandatory, where they're cited in maybe an approved document in England or Wales, for example. That is not the case. They are quoted in law and they can support law, national and European as well. But that is of the lesser number of our standards. So the what good looks like, it's a language, okay? It allows connectivity and interoperability, and that's what we seek to achieve. Now, this slide is actually sort of titled Hierarchy of Standards, but let me be clear. These are all equally important standards in the broader sense. What this is really is a hierarchy of sort of formality. So if you look at the pyramid here, and you could just as easily turn it the other way around, but the foundation, the base here are private and professional standards, codes and guidance, of which there are many. CABE, for example, has an awful lot, and they've been developed further. Professional codes, best practice, maybe corporate technical specifications, and private and consortia standards as well. We as BSI also help individual entities or consortia write their own private standards that will never released. It's how they operate as a business or a process within their business. And they are hugely important, and they exist across our sector. Then we have the space in which BSI, as the national standards body, manages British standards and European norms and ISO standards and IEC standards. We'll touch upon today some examples of BSI PAS standards and how we're used in our marketplace. We'll talk about the mainstay of our national standards and the important role that they stand formally. We'll talk about and touch upon some European standards. We are and continue to be a full member of CEN, and then international standards as well. What's really important about the space in which BSI manages and oversees is that we have the ability, where it is in the interest of the UK, for us to elevate maybe a PAS standard or a formal British standard into CEN or into ISO. And we've done that working with our industry and our experts, as an example, for building information modeling. But just moving into the sector more broadly, obviously from where I sit, I oversee a team that have the important role of looking after all of our relevant built environment committees in BSI, and working with some 4,000 experts that give their time and their employers' time to help us develop and produce and publish and thereafter refine and hone standards in the built environment sector. It's hugely important, and we're very grateful that they do that. So I've got a team of about 25 people that look after the committees, and I'll take you through some examples therein. But I also have a sector team that looks for the white space, where whilst built environment is very established and typically heavily regulated, what else is happening? Where do we need to innovate? Where do we need to move forward? So that's my built environment team that do and undertake such amazing work within BSI. So as a sector, just a couple of points I would call out in my experience when working within the UK and around the globe. The sector itself in the UK is worth about £211 billion per annum. Okay, for the UK economy, that's anywhere between 6 and 8% GDP. It's about the same size as healthcare, actually, in the UK. And while we call it a sector, and then we say it consists of industries therein, such as design, the specialists in and around design, the construction of assets, and then facilities and asset management. And a huge slug for us, in effect, is manufacturing, but that would include construction products. And that alone is worth about £67 billion a year to the UK marketplace. Public sector, His Majesty's government and local authorities therein, represent the largest single client of construction works in this country, some 24%, and we should never forget that. Thereafter, when you think about, away from the client, but types of work, repair and maintenance is the largest proportion of works undertaken in the UK, about 41%. And that would include here, for example, energy efficiency retrofit, which we'll touch upon a bit later. There do remain significant challenges for the UK built environment sector. There is no doubt about it. We have seen and witnessed and continue to witness rising material costs, export tariffs, labour shortages, with changes happening post-Brexit, but also an ageing workforce, changes to stamp duty and the new levies, such as the £3.4 billion housing safety tax, to further support remediation of non-compliant systems such as cladding on large residential buildings. Therefore, we see strain on developers and their supply chains, and we're seeing project delays, which are further exacerbating housing shortages. Okay, there's a long way for us to go. Things are improving, but there's more to do. And it's fair to say, when we listen to commentary, the built environment also continues to struggle to make significant reform to itself in terms of the systemic issues relating to its workforce, the culture, and that comes back time and time again with the likes of Dame Julie Hackett seeking a sizable cultural change post-Grenfell in terms of how we go about designing and maintaining buildings and the competence of those that undertake such roles, and even how our procurement methods work and how they might be perceived to conspire against us in terms of product selection, costs, etc. Sustainability remains a focus. There's no doubt about it. We have seen shifts around the globe where perhaps ambitious net zero targets aren't as being pushed as heavily around the globe in some areas as we've witnessed, but they're still hugely important, okay? And they are helping to drive innovation in the sector. It doesn't really matter ultimately if your currency is carbon abated or pound saved. Energy efficiency can make a huge collective difference. And therefore, seeing innovation in the space around energy efficiency retrofit for existing buildings is proving really important. However, the sector is adopting advanced technologies like modular construction and digital tools. Again, I'll touch upon them shortly. And we're utilising to improve our efficiency and potentially our compliance, and they're half to meet broader fire safety related regulatory demands. So there is innovation taking place. And of course, we can't not talk about infrastructure investments. Some 700 billion is being committed over the next decade, and that is a welcome commitment. And again, by embracing wider sustainability activities, not just on mitigation, I think we have a very good success story on mitigation, but also thinking about adaptation now as well. Maybe the recent weather would remind us of that. But then coupling with technology, then we can start to see a sector that can balance its challenges with a transformative progress. So moving in the right direction. What that broadly looks like in very simple terms, and just to say to attendees joining us today, this will be held as a recording both on the CABE website and its YouTube channel. And I'll throw up a few links today, and Deborah probably as well, where you can go back and get those links and scan QR codes so you can get some of the information that we cover today. But again, if you're looking at where we sit as a broad sector, we've touched upon the importance of building safety post-Grenfell in the spirit of openness and transparency. Whilst I joined BSI some 13 years ago, before that, I was a regulator of what is now MHCLG, and I oversaw the technical aspects of the English building regs. So I was called before the Grenfell inquiry. And there are huge lessons to be learnt there. Yes, we've had the advent of the all-important changes in the Building Safety Act 2022, but there's lots more to do. An example is competence. It's fair to say people have embraced competence and the need thereafter to comply, but there's still lots more to do. There are still a great many people in our sector that do not believe that any of the changes post-Grenfell affect them because they don't build large resi buildings, okay? Let me assure you, if you're one of those people sat watching this today, these changes affect you. Construction products we'll touch upon because if you get them right, they can aid compliance along the way and give a high-performing building that performs for a very long time. You get them wrong, then these can bring about considerable problems down the line as well. So they're very important to us. Sustainability touched upon, but I'll say a bit more about that later. And then we will touch upon industrialization and quality. We're talking about modern methods of construction, and they're starting to play a bigger and bigger piece for us. Digital and data, we've come a long way. I've spoken at CABE events and many other events about building information modeling and information management. We were Luddites in the sector, and with our experts and similar, we've become a leading light. In fact, we're seen as one of the world leaders in this space, but there's more we could do about real-time data and similar. And then we come down to financial security. I touched upon the costs involved and the concerns. We're still seeing tier one contractors fold because of poor margins and operating costs. And there's a net effect there, and we need to balance that. And in fact, looking at this, we probably need to balance the use and the approach to many of these. But we still need building safety and definitively compliance too. So when we talk about the Built Environment Committee as a collective, just to sort of say, from my perspective, my team overlook about 240 committees. Okay, so about 200 national and 40 within CEN and ISO. So a massive amount of activity, and get to work with some 3,500, 4,000 committee experts, as I say, that give their time and their all their employers' time so willingly to help us develop these standards. What that means is at any one time we have about 900 active work items. That could be new standards, that could be revisions to standards, that could be corrigendum and similar. So a lot of activity. We break them down typically around design, construction products, the operational side, sustainability and fire safety. What that broadly looks like is what you've got before you there. Areas in terms of sustainability, digital trust, okay, information modeling, golden thread of information, etc. And then really, where we've always held a big place as an NSB, BSI, health, safety and well-being. Lots in the space, competency, fire safety. And then, of course, into quality, very close as well to health, safety and well-being as well, but 99001, which we'll touch upon shortly, and the move into modern methods of construction and the new Eurocodes as well. So lots of activity underway. But let's get into a bit more detail in terms of building safety. There's been a lot going on in terms of fire safety standards. There's been a lot in the press, a lot of it, the majority of it very supportive, but some concerns being raised along the way. But a few that I want to just raise here today would include fire safety and BS 4422, published last year about vocabulary. It sets out the terms relating to fire safety in the built environment. As I say, published last year. It is intended to be a comprehensive reference for terms and definitions within fire safety standards, typically our own. However, and my team are very keen to do this, and I agree with them, as so parts of industry, we need to think more about how we make that more widely available to the marketplace. So perhaps we could all be using the same, preferably, or similar terms at the very best. And so that's something I would draw your attention to and something that we want to look at. This year, we've revised a very important standard to us, 5839 Part 1, that's fire detection alarm systems for non-dom, published earlier in the year, very well received by industry and practitioners. You'd have seen some articles in journals and similar just taking you through. But again, it's been around a long time. This is a major update about how you extend and modify existing systems, what is acceptable and what is definitively not acceptable, a bit more guidance around call points, and a bit of a major restructure. Then moving over to 9991, that was published last year, Fire Safety and Design Management and Use of Residential Buildings. That took an awful long time to bring it to publication, a huge amount of work by our amazing committee members and panels to get it to this point. It was published in November. An inordinate amount of comments received, 1,800, and it took an inordinate amount of time to work through those. The main points in there, it was updating from the 2015 version. So, of course, 9991 talks about the provision of 2 stairs in taller residential buildings. It does set out the use of evacuation lifts with reference to 8176. It talks about the restriction on combustible material being used for load-bearing elements of structure in taller buildings and care homes included for the first time. This probably got the most sort of headlines in our sector, with, again, some considerable confusion about it being mandatory and it trumping approved document B and the costs involved for providing evacuation lifts. Again, just to be crystal clear, this is a voluntary standard. It is very well utilised, certainly earlier iteration, and where it's been discussed and referred to in discussions with building control, you can use it to help show compliance, but it remains a voluntary standard, okay? So think about and have those discussions. In terms of latest happenings, in terms of existing buildings, we've just published BS 9792, Fire Risk Assessment, Housing Code of Practice. It replaces the old PAS 792. It's a full revision, okay, and gives latest guidance on evacuation requirements for people with specific needs, okay. Consultation closed, a huge amount of consultees responded, thank you, and that published at the start of this month actually. So if you're not aware, have a look. And then ongoing PAS 9980, fire risk appraisal of external wall construction and cladding of existing blocks of flats, sponsored by MHCLG and Home Office. A major revision put out to consultation with a view to improving clarity, usability and references. Again, huge amount of comments came in. Thank you. And the panel and our technical authors are doing an amazing job working through. Looking for publication around the end of this year for that revision. Then, in terms of construction products, it won't have passed you by. You'd have seen the articles, probably written by Richard and probably Howell as well in the CABE journal, about the advent of the government's green paper on construction products. Again, where do they go next with regulation around products? That is underway now. The consultation is closed and MHCLG are considering the consultees' responses. In the meantime, again, working with MHCLG and OPSS, we have developed a new PAS 2000, okay? It's a new standard to bring about safe products to market, and it's out for public consultation now. Technical author for this, big shout out, will be Dr. Hal Davis, technical insights man at CABE. We're very appreciative, and we utilised his expertise over many years when he first worked at BRE and thereafter, to actually look through and go, what does good look like? While we await for government to further regulate in the construction product space, what do we need to think about in terms of the recommendations for carrying out due diligence before a construction product is actually placed on the UK market? So it talks about risk assessment, factory production control, the importance of correct product information and its ability to be collected and utilised, and the use of market feedback. A really important PAS standard there. It is out for consultation. I'll give you a link later where you can go in and access it. It closes on the 8th of September. I know we're in the busy period, so that's why we extended it out to the 8th of September for consultation. And we're looking at possible publication for March next year. But if you have the time and you have the interest, we'd welcome comments on that. Competence, one of our largest areas that we deal with within BSI. Gentle reminder, Dame Judith Hackett's review of building safety. She challenged us to develop an improved set of systemic competencies. It was a big piece in her overarching independent review. A massive amount of work undertaken by our industry, the setting up of the competence steering group, raising the bar recommendations, and the creation of a suite of standards was needed and supported documents for key roles and functions. Within BSI, working with experts and working with MHCLG, we established our Built Environment Competence Standards work, the BEX programme, and we started that way back in March 2020. We had formation of a strategy group, and we started with the development of 4 standard documents. We've also spun up, because we needed it, because the amount of work going on, a new BSI Technical Committee, CPB1, and that started in April 2021, and that is chaired by CABE CEO Richard Harrell, and that is where they are looking to develop and maintain our competence standards. We started back with Flex 8670. Again, it's that overarching core criteria for building safety in competence framework. It is a code of practice. It went out and we used a fast-track standard approach called Flex, okay? 2 iterations, 1,800 comments, and we developed that over a short period of time, ultimately landing the final Flex, the version 3, but now importantly, it's been converted into a full British standard, 8670, okay? So that's the overarching framework. What then followed, and actually it followed alongside, were 3 further PASs, one for the principal designer, one principal contractor, and building safety management manager, okay? Really important PASs that provides the context working within the surroundings of the framework of the overarching, what is now British Standard 8670, okay? So again, you know, if it's passed you by, you know, the legislation in terms of the new Building Safety Act and the regulations thereafter, competence is relevant. Competence is a material consideration. You have to be fit to undertake the role that you undertake. I come from a time when I worked building control way back, whereby at the end of the day, the completed building needed to comply, okay? Now, rightfully, we've said no. Okay, that is still and remains important under the building regs, but in the meantime, you should be utilising competent professionals to undertake relevant pieces of work. In terms of current and future activity, current work in process with the development of 8670 Part 2, Construction Product Competence Framework, and I'll take you through a bit more detail of that in a moment. And soon, publication of 8674, Competence of Individual Risk Assessors, okay? We're starting to have discussions, well, more than starting, about what else do we need in our sector in the way of competency frameworks. And, you know, we're not the sole originator of frameworks as well. Let's be quite clear. So ICSG, Competence Steering Group, are producing frameworks there as well. We work very closely with them, okay? But we're still being asked to undertake new standards for varying different aspects of competency in the sector, okay? So we've got management of competence for organisations we're looking like, so competence at an organisational level. We're also looking at competence for sustainability professionals. And coupled with the 3 PASs I showed you for duty holders, or 32 duty holders, systematic review of those PASs with a view to turning them into British standards next year. And they got, again, lots of collaboration, as I've touched upon, a new competency hub, which I'll show you in a minute, support and aligning with sector activity and the all-important work by ICSG, okay, and refining our strategy moving forward. So just a bit of an update therein. As I say, 8670-2 is coming. It's a competency framework for construction product competency. It is based on all the hard work undertaken by the competence standards developed under Working Group 12 at what was the CSG. And it will be a cross-cutting standard setting requirements for all aspects of product manufacture, specification, and use. Okay, it is a foundational standard, therefore, hence the link to 8670. This is part 2. This will be out for public consultation in October of this year. Similarly, building upon the work of Working Group 4 of the Competence Steering Group, and the document to the right is an excellent document that was developed with industry and experts, but overseen and supported by Fire Sector Federation, now Fire Sector Confederation. This consolidates all of that best industry practice on competence for individuals undertaking risk assessment. So we're starting now to link, as we did for construction products, back to the work on PAS 2000. And here we have work here for competence of fire risk assessors back to the work we're doing on 9980 and the replacement for PAS 79-2. You're getting a more complete picture of what good looks like, not just for the buildings, the specification, the process, but also the individual professionals involved. Okay, so again, because this builds upon the 3 earlier PASs, this is now going to be 8674. That is publication is imminent sometime later this month. And then just to touch upon the BSI Built Environment Competence Hub, because it is a hugely important issue. In fact, Dame Judith Hackett raised the issue of competence when she appeared before a House of Lords inquiry looking at the operation of the building safety regulator. She talked about the importance of competence. It was one of her recommendations, and the work that industry has undertaken and BSI have been involved with and supported along the way. But the take-up and the understanding is not quite where we expect it to be. There are too many people that, again, don't believe that competency needs to relate to them. They're not affected. They don't deal with large residential buildings. Again, that isn't the case. So BSI are setting up a hub, a competence hub, which will be a central space to promote best practice, drive culture change, and improve access to our standards and guidance for all users. We are working and collaborating closely with the ICSG, who do an amazing task themselves, and say for their activity in this space and frameworks and competency standards as well, to develop the content for the hub, okay, and to support the building sector, built environment sector at large. Hopefully, this will further strengthen industry alignment on competency and create a trusted space for knowledge sharing and collaboration. We need your input. We'll be looking to launch the hub towards the end of the year. I'll say end of the year. You might see a slide short that talks about November. But if we say we've looked to have this in place for you to come in and access and read updates and be cited on activities and events and standards, it will be towards the end of the year, and we'll leave it like that at the moment. But it should be really exciting, so watch this space. There's the broad competency timeline that I touched upon. If you come back and watch the recording from CABE website or the YouTube channel, this will probably give you the best oversight of what's happened and where we're going next. A couple of QR codes for you there as well. Again, come back in, scan them on your phone, and these will take you to the relevant web pages from the BSI website. So MMC, now I think it's fair to say an awful lot has been discussed about MMC, but we need to put it in the context of MMC, but also the industrialised construction approach. We have a new committee, CB 301, Offsite and Modern Methods of Construction, and that committee is responsible for all of our standards in this space, okay? We are currently working with Homes England, MHCLG, who sponsored a PAS, which I'll touch upon in a moment. NISTA, and I'll look down at my notes, is the National Infrastructure Service Transformation Authority, and others around a standards landscape to support industrialised construction. A broad concept which incorporates client demand and manufacturing-led processes into, like MMC, but into a single framework. What you've got there on the slide before you is actually figure 1 from our new PAS 8700 that published earlier in the year. Okay, again, sponsored by MHCLG, given their interest in MMC, but also housing, and their target they're in for 1.5 million new homes before the end of Parliament. And what this figure looks to do is to connect all the relevant terms together. Okay, you can do standalone MMC, and there it is in its space, or you can do it as part of an industrialized process. Because MMC is happening now, you know, we're seeing some very popular hoteliers building MMC hotels, and they have a demand and a need. Or you could do it on a much bigger program of activity, whereby you actually set out, I broadly want this many buildings of this type. There are changes that can undertake, but actually there's an element of repeatability. So we're moving away from individual contracts to packages, huge packages and programs of work. So an example that a colleague utilizes is, you know, if you're thinking about building skills for the future program, in terms of, you know, yeah, you'll want thousands of staircases to go into these new schools. Yes, they'll be sited differently, they'll be slightly differently configured, but a lot will be the same. So let's bring them together and actually do it as a program of activity. And this talks about that very issue of actually, you can do it as MMC, there are other aspects of offsite, but think about it as a product platform and think about design for manufacturing, you know, but bringing about simplification and rationalization. Just moving into the next slide. Again, so PAS 8700 published in effect around April earlier this year, as I say, sponsored by MHCLG. It's all about modern methods of construction for new build residential properties. This provides a specification, okay, and it sets out the requirements for modern methods of construction, MMC, in new build resi, including processes and activities. And the PAS is applicable to most types of residential building approach for MMC and materials, okay? And in particular, the PAS introduces the role of an MMC advisor and provides requirements for integrating MMC into projects, and then those larger programs I touched upon, and portfolios of work, okay? So again, the slide you have, or the picture on the right, is actually figure 2 from PAS 8700, and shows how product lifecycle and project lifecycle align, allowing for such integrations along the way, okay? Have a look, it's on our website, you can download this as a PAS. This is our first sort of detailed foray into MMC, but we've got lots more activity to follow. So please take some time and have a look. Okay, in terms of energy efficiency retrofit, moving on now, just a couple of things as a gentle reminder. From our perspective, we've published retrofit standards for a very long time now for government. New government came in, again, energy efficiency retrofit is still hugely important and much needed and wanted by our government. And when you look at the state of some 27 million homes in this country, in varying states of disrepair and levels of performance for energy efficiency, we really need it. Trust marks sit there to provide the retrofit quality mark and customer charter code of conduct. And of course, it's not parochial just to England. Scotland and Wales have their own domestic programs too. In the centre there, I won't read them out, but we've got the standards we have in place, the PAS standards for both non-domestic and domestic, okay? And then there are a suite of supporting technical standards beneath that. Yes, British standards, but lots of industry standards as well, okay? In, you know, be it from MCS, and Des knows his own sort of guides therein as well, okay? and there's more being developed. It's a collective framework. There's that word again of standards. So what does it look like? We have the privilege of supporting the Retrofit Standards Task Group, the RSTG. That's really a steering group that provides advice for DES and NES who make their own decisions, but take advice from a large collection of industry. But there again are the relevant standards in place in terms of the PAS standards. PAS 2038 non-domestic is up for review, and that should be happening next year. We then have the CB401 range, which touches upon performance evaluation, indoor air quality, and how you undertake retrofit assessments. Again, should be available later this year. And then on the domestic side, everything around PAS 2035, 2030, which the use is typically conditioned by funding arrangements such as ECO and similar. Okay, so if you want to tap into ECO funding, you would utilize the PAS approach here. Again, innovation, as I said at the start, things are moving at pace. Okay, so we're expecting to see around February next year an innovation amendment because we're seeing products enter the market very quickly. Okay, and some of them are utterly amazing, and others, yes, promise to be amazing, but we don't necessarily know how they really perform. And so we need some guardrails around that of what good looks like and how you test them. And so that will be coming. Mindful of the time, just touching upon a few other areas. I've spoken about this before, but of course, when we start looking at climate change and carbon emissions, if you look at the ubiquitous product, that's a material that is concrete, typically 8% of the world's carbon emissions comes from concrete. And so the Green Construction Board, Infrastructure Working Group and BSI work together thinking about how they move forward. Some amazing work they're in, led by the Institution of Civil Engineers. What does the route map look like for low carbon concrete? Suggestions were a number of standards would be needed. The first of those that we took forward was Flex 350, okay, for alternative binder systems for lower carbon concrete. You can see that on our website, sponsored by the ICE, Civils, and the Low Carbon Group, and with input from the Green Construction Board and a number of sponsors, okay. That's Flex is there, it's there being utilised. In terms of where we go for the future, ultimately it might become BS 8500-3 and set specification by performance for low carbon concrete, building upon what we've recently published are our two extant concrete standards, 8500 Part 1 and Part 2. They were updated a couple of years back. But again, it provides recommendations about how you assess and use alternative binder systems, ABS, including geopolymer and alkali activated materials. And it will be of interest to engineers, designers, end users, contractors, building control, because again, the world is changing. What material are they using on your site and what is its performance? Yes, it can behave impeccably when it comes to carbon abatement and reduced carbon emissions, but how does it perform in fire? How does it perform in submerged water? Those sorts of considerations. Again, retrofit QR code there for you therein. Okay, just a couple more to touch upon before I hand over to Deborah, if I may. Sustainability of construction works, again, comes up an awful lot. Don't have the time to go into detail. Maybe you'll have us back another time and we'll come and do this in a bit more technical depth. We have an amazing committee, B558, that looks after sustainability of construction works. To the right-hand side there are some of the key standards, European standards therein, in terms of environmental product declarations, how you undergo assessment of performance, social performance of buildings, etc. So lots of activity supporting the EU Construction Products Regulation, the CPR, but also the EU Green Deal and a broader European Circular Economy Action Plan. And I just want to touch upon that as well. We hear a lot about circularity, designing for disassembly, reuse of products and similar. There is a lot of activity in this space, again, mirrored by 558, but one of its working groups, Part 1. These are all things we're looking at in terms of where we go next, with a focus on resource efficiency, reuse and recycling, and life cycle thinking. The working groups down the right-hand side are now meeting in the throes of final setup, but they'll be meeting in CEN and covering a myriad of areas. If you are involved in sustainability, product development, and similar, you'll probably have an interest in some of those particular areas of activity. And again, let's keep talking and see how we can keep you best appraised of what's happening in this important space. And then really the final substantial point for me is to just talk about the generation 2 of the structural Eurocodes. from my perspective, I'm sure you're all more than aware, a great many of you, but the Eurocodes are a set of structural design standards that provide a common approach for structural and geotechnical design of buildings and civil engineering works. You know, I started working at MHCLG when Gen 1 turned up with the Eurocodes, and that was a big change for us when that arrived. What they do is they enable engineers to make sure their designs are safe, serviceable, robust, and durable. And they do this by setting out requirements and recommendations in the suite of Eurocodes on the right-hand side. BSI are very proud of the activity on Eurocodes, not least because we actually oversee TC 250, which is the relevant technical committee in CEN that oversees the development of the structural Eurocodes. And you know, colleagues in my team work so hard in taking these forward, and then taking these forward nationally as well. And we also have Professor Steve Denton, who is the chair of TC 250 and has taken forward this Generation 2 update. How they're organised? Yeah, we publish them as BSI. There are 10 Eurocodes extant, as it were. They're being revised, and each part is accompanied by a national annex. Okay, and it's the national annexes that are really important because they set out nationally determined parameters for use in design and civil engineering works to be constructed in the country concerned. So we need to be concerned and cognizant of our weather patterns, our wind speed, our temperatures, and similar, as an example, and we make them relevant to the UK, okay? And that's really important. So Gen 2 will in fact consist of not 10, but 11 European standards going forward. We have a new one, 19100, which is the design of glass structures, okay? There'll be 12 CEN technical specifications and 7 CEN technical reports. What you need to be aware of is the Eurocodes will have a date of publication no later than the 30th of September 2027. Feels like a long way away, but it isn't. And therefore, Gen 1 Eurocodes, what we're using now, the extent version, will be withdrawn on the 30th of March 2028. Okay. Now, through amazing support by our regulators, so the Building Safety Regulator, they have supported the undertaking and development of our national standards, so putting it into a national context, and they've used your money, public money, to help pay experts to write our national annexes, okay? And these national annexes work has started now for each of the Eurocodes. In some cases, some very detailed work. National annexes we can expect around September 2027. What we're saying in National Forward, you really should be using all of the new Eurocodes together. However, while the use of provisions in the standards, the new Eurocodes in conjunction with first gen Eurocodes is not precluded, if you're going to attempt to mix and match, then you need to undertake that with care, and you need to discuss the matter, both yourselves as design teams, contractors, and of course, the relevant regulatory authorities, okay? But you will need to be cognizant about what might be needed in the actual UK annexes as well. Again, QR code there, some great videos there, just setting out the activity that's been undertaken at a European level with considerable input from the UK. Loads of sort of bite-sized videos there for you to have a look at and understand what is coming with the Eurocodes. And then for me, final bits and pieces. We touched upon 99001, which is a quality management system for the built environment that builds upon 9001, which itself is out for public consultation. We are therefore seeking sector-wide feedback to help inform the future update of 99001. What do you think we need to do with it? What more should we be looking at? And how do we make it fit for purpose, or even more fit for purpose, for our sector? Okay, interest is really starting to spike on 99001, and so now is our opportunity to think about what more it needs, so we could bring out a revision alongside the next version and update of 9001. There is a survey, there's the link, so it'll be there on the recording. If you have an interest, please do take the time. And then finally, where you want to comment on our draft standards, and I refer to PAS 2000 backend, if you use this QR code, it will take you to our landing page where you can comment on the draft standards out for public consultation. We call it DPC, draft for public consultation. Or if you want to lodge ideas for new standards, that portal will allow you to do that as well. So it's hugely important to us. So please do take the time and tell us what you think is also needed. And then the last two slides, and then I will hand over to Deborah, is that, again, this is offered by a number of providers in the marketplace. I need to be quite clear, not just BSI Group, this is wider group activity. But the CITB have unlocked 70% of funding on a number of courses across the sector, including BSI courses. There's some examples there about BIM, environmental management, health and safety, AI, quality management, 9001 there again. You can tap into that if you work for a business that pays a levy for the Construction Industry Training Board straight into CITB. So again, it's predicated that where you work is paying the levy, but then you can tap in and unlock 70% savings on these courses as well. Okay, and there's an approved list of all that exists, as I say, but this is just for BSI. They exist elsewhere as well, and I need to make that quite clear, but they're there for you too. Other than that, that's me done. I know that was a massively fast canter through, but maybe you'll have us back another time where we can get into a bit more detail. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Deborah Brown, who'll talk you through access to our standards and micro businesses.
Thank you, Ant, and hello, everybody. I was introduced earlier, but yes, my name is Deborah Brown, and I head up the commercial sales team at BSI, which is, as we know, the national standards body. So I've just got a few minutes. I'm going to just review a new type of subscription that we've created, which we're piloting at the moment with support from CABE, that's aimed at supporting the smallest businesses in the UK with access to all of the standards that you may have heard about from Ant earlier in this session. So next slide, please, Ant. Okay, so yes, I talked about a new type of library subscription for the smallest businesses in the UK, aka the micro businesses as per the Companies House definition. So this subscription offer, it's a 12-month subscription, revolves around our BSI Knowledge library. What we've done, we've opened up the entire content of British, adopted European, international and publicly available specifications. So that's a library of close to 100,000 full text documents, which you can search by keyword, or you can put in the standard number, or you can browse through modules. It's view only. We couldn't release the entire database for download at the cost we're offering this at, but it does mean that it's there 24/7 for the subscribers to pop in and out and look at standards in full text and verify the references that they're looking at. Importantly, it does have a notification feature, and this means that you can track a standard so that when it changes, you will receive an alert via email that enables you to know that that standard has changed, and you can nip onto the platform and have a look to see what's changed. So it does keep you up to date. Next slide, please. And this is just a reminder for you. Many of you may have heard about this new type of subscription, because we have been working with CABE for close to a year now. So they have been promoting it, and it is available on your member portal at the cbuilde.com resources and discounts page. You click into the BSI Knowledge drop down, and there'll be some bullet point information about what the offer is, as I've described it. So in terms of eligibility, it is aimed at this point in time at the smallest businesses. So, and it starts at £360 per year. So that's a flat rate plus VAT for up to entities that have up to 5 employees. And then there's one tier after that. But if you go to that site, fill out the form, then that will come to my team, and we will call you to discuss the options for signing up. So to finish up and make sure we have time for Q&A, I'm going to just do a whistle-stop tour of the Knowledge platform live. So I'm going to share my screen now. And is that visible? And yes, you can see it. Okay. So this is the BSI Knowledge platform. This is the commercial entry point to the work that the national standards body does in itself. So people come here if they want to buy a single copy of a standard, but also subscribers to multiple documents come here to log in. So in itself, it's a pretty useful landing page for you to browse. Lots of information about new standards that have been published, lots of articles and useful background information to the documents you may want to be looking at. You can look at trending topics, and those are across sector, or you can scroll down and explore by industry and click on, for example, construction and building. And this is a dedicated pages for the built environment that will talk about new standards, useful articles, and again, you can browse by topic. In this case, I'm just here, as you might be, to find a particular standard. And in this case, I'm just going to search for the very popular 9991. So I just start to type in the numbers, and as you can see, the search engine starts to retrieve results based on what you've typed in. I can see straight away that this is the one I want. It might not be. You may want to hit enter and then look at all the results that come back and browse them, but I can see that's the one I want. So I'm just going to click on that link, and it takes me to the homepage for this particular standard. So you can see up there, you get the full number and the title of the standard. It will also talk about the status and the publication date. This is what's known as the bibliographic page. We have an overview of the standard, several tabs. You can look through a preview of it if you're not too sure what it's about and can read some more context. There are all the normative references, all hyperlinkable, so you can nip in and out of the standards as you wish to view them. But in this case, you can see I haven't logged in yet as a subscriber. This is if I was visiting the homepage to buy a single copy. And you can see here on the right-hand side, this is the cost to buy a single copy, downloadable version. Non-members, it's an expensive document, £330, or a member, if you're a member of BSI, it's £165.
And just in terms of a number of CABE members have actually already signed up for this. Is that right, Deborah?
Yes, we've got a fair few that have signed up, and the usage is very good and the feedback is very good. And I do believe there was a case study as well that CABE did with one of the members. Brilliant.
No, absolutely. No, look, being completely open, the cost of standards comes up an awful lot. In fact, it was raised in the MHCRG Green Paper consultation about the access to standards. This is the very thing we're trying to do, where we're thinking about starting here with micro and smaller entities, whereby can we provide greater access at a lower cost? Because quite simply, somebody somewhere has to pay. We are not part of government, we're not civil servants. It costs an awful lot of money to operate the NSB, notwithstanding 11,000 or maybe even 12,000 committee experts giving their time. And the only way we can do that is typically by charging for our content. But if there are better ways, more proportionate ways we can do that for smaller entities, then that's what we're exploring here. Right.
So what's changed? The last screen we were looking at before I logged in was showing me the single copy cost of that document. Now that I've logged in, you can see two things have changed. The single copy price has been reduced down here because actually it is already included in your collection. You have a green tick that tells you this is included in the special offer for the smallest businesses in the multi-content subscription. You'll also see a little alarm bell icon that has appeared, and this is what I referred to earlier in terms of notifications that you can track this document. But at this point in time, I just want to view the document online and see if it contains the information I need. So it's brought up the content in full text. This is the new sort of format that all the standards will be loaded into the portal. This is XML format, which helps to encourage deeper searching within the content. So you can either just scroll through the document and read it, or you can, through the structure of the document on the left-hand side, move to a particular section that you might be interested in. And as I said, this offer is view only. You can't download this document, but you do have Windows snip functionality or the print screen, so you could highlight that particular diagram and copy and paste it into an offline document. But at this point in time, I think, yes, this is an important document for me. I want to save it and I want to track it. So we'll go back to this home page and I'm going to click on the list or the alarm bell icon. Now, what it will come up with, let me just move that out the way, is either you've created some existing lists that you want to add this document into. It could be that you're working on a particular project. I've named one here as Project Azure, and all the relevant standards for that project you can tag into this folder. It's sometimes a useful way of finding all the documents rather than searching for them one at a time, but it also means that all being tracked and you will receive a notification if anything changes. Standards don't tend to update that often, but if you're looking at, you know, a good selection of them, 10 or 20, then chances are one or two of them will be in a cycle of updating. In this case, I'm just going to create a new list. And I will just call this for this document. This is a critical document that I want to save. And then I just want to say, you can put any notes in here, tracking the document. And basically, that's it. That the list has been created. So if you want to manage those lists or search in a different way rather than through the Google search toolbar at the home page, just click on the menu bar on the top left hand side, and you can see that there's an option for My Collection. Now this is a lot of clients on standard pricing will have smaller collections of standard, so they will go in here just to search through what they've purchased. But in this case, it pretty much is the whole database. So you can either use it to filter and look through BSI modules. There is a construction module that you can filter through, or it's a good place to get to your lists and you can manage these. If I click on that, it will tell me what document is in there. It's an easy way to access that and get back to the standard. And let me just move this out the way. There's the settings button here where you can either delete a list if you're building up too many, or you can edit it. You can change how often you may want to be notified on it, if you want it to track weekly or daily or monthly. And in a nutshell, that is the BSI Knowledge platform.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. And I don't know if anybody has any questions about the platform at all. They're free to ask.
Yeah, please do put any questions for Deborah in the chat. There has been one popped in, which is for yourself, Ant, if it's okay to direct this one your way. So we have the question, in terms of competency frameworks for other parts roles within the industry that you mentioned, do we know what these will look like and when they will be available to industry?
I think the easiest sort of answer to that is, as I set out, in terms of the next example of an overarching framework we'll publish, it will be the one for construction products, and that'll be publishing, I think we said in October. So that'll show you the look and feel of how a framework that relates to construction products in terms of design, use, specification operates. The next one for an individual or like a vertical competency for a profession will be the risk assessment one, which will publish, as I say, later this month. Okay, so that's imminent, and that'll be the best way to see and get a feel of what the frameworks look like and the verticals continue to look like for individual professions and roles in the sector. And do have a look at ICSGE and what they publish as well, because BSI do not do this alone. Industry are coming together as well, publishing frameworks soon. So have a look at the ICSGE website and what they publish as well in that space and make available. But hopefully coming very soon, and you'll be able to access them and actually comment upon the one framework for construction products.
Thank you, Ant. We are at time. There aren't any other questions that I can see in the Q&A at the moment. Thank you both so much for those presentations, and thank you to everybody that has joined us this morning. Just to remind everyone that the webinar has been recorded and it will be uploaded to both the CABE website and to our YouTube channel in due course, and that can obviously be shared with your colleagues. So with that, I can wrap everything up. Thanks very much once again to Ant and to Deborah, and thanks to everyone for taking part. And goodbye for now.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.